Hey, hey. All right. Let's plug this thing in. I'm doing well. How are you, Emily? Is it Emily or is it Emily? Is it just like Emily?
Yeah.
Only Emily.
The
Do you understand what I'm asking? It's because of the way it's spelled.
one with the eyes, like Emily, and mine's Emily. So it's like slightly different.
But it's not like Emma Lee. Okay.
It's spelled like two names right now.
Well, it's like a southern name. Okay. Sienna. It sound. You know how southern names put two names together. It's a Irish family name, Daly, D-A-L-Y. Yep. Douglas. D-A-L-Y, but pronounced the same way. Okay, I thought, appreciate the prayer to keep it simple, and I'll try to do just that. I thought simply, since we talked about artificial intelligence on Monday and we looked at DALL-E, I thought I'd compare real intelligence and artistic talent, specifically Sienna's artistic talent, to DALL-E. So here was the prompt, you'll remember. And DALL-E, with this prompt, Dallas DeWitt, walking a tightrope over a river of molten lava, gave us this, which is quite an extraordinary likeness. If you're in the front row, you can. Does that look like Dallas or what? Sienna went this direction, which I think is actually quite good. Like if I had not told you who that was on the tightrope, I think you'd say that's Dallas DeWitt. Thank you very much. That was what?
He needs to join us in the gym.
I know, for sure. And he's like so casual, like, dude, this is not hard. I can go over lava. Okay, so this is Wednesday. And remember, we were looking at this. I'm trying to equip you to recognize and firmly reject the most influential counterfeit origins account of our day. And once again, that is the sort of the idea that there isn't anything other than the physical universe and that we're products of a physical universe with no personal God, no divine influence, no divine master plan, that things just happen. And when things happen, planets like Earth form, and when planets like Earth form, life just starts, because that's what physics does on Earth-like planets. And once life starts, it gets more and more complicated, because that's what life does, according to Darwin. And eventually it becomes like us, because that's just what happens. So if that's true, there should be any number of Earth-like planets out there somewhere else, maybe some in the galaxy or in far away galaxies where there are intelligent beings, maybe more intelligent than us, who are having discussions like this. And it all happened just because this is what physics does, right? So that's the lie. That's the counterfeit narrative that we're trying to overturn. And we've already done it, I think, right? Monday we already said we're not just physical. So that part can't be true. No physical process can produce something that isn't physical, and our mind, soul, spirit is not physical. So it's worse than Jim Carrey's odds. Remember, his was 1 in a million, so I do have a chance. We said it's 0 because it's a category error, right? If we're not physical, if we're not purely physical, then a purely physical process can't. It's impossible to produce us. And then yesterday we looked at Darwin's theory, and we introduced a term, and we defined it. And remember that hierarchy picture, like for things to perform high-level functions? Anybody remember what the term was? They all have to have.
Thoughts.
Well, no. Remember the hierarchy with the circle on top and then the parts within parts?
Oh, yeah.
Functional coherence. Functional coherence. Did you say that?
Yes.
Oh, ribosome. She's calling out ribosome.
No, I said her.
Dude, no, she said it first.
No, I said her.
I heard ribosome coming at me. So we're soaking this in. Okay, so remember I said, okay, we come up with this argument against Darwin's theory, but do you think if we went to Stanford right now and gathered all the biologists and said, dudes, you're wrong, dudes and gals, you're wrong, do you think they'd say, oh, okay, we're wrong? Or would they say, no, you're wrong, and here's how it actually works? They would say the latter, right? And so I want to come back to this and give you some insight into what goes wrong with the way they think they get around this, okay? And I'm not maligning people. These are smart people, and some of them are Christians, in fact. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm definitely not saying they're dumb people, because they're not. I'm just saying they've got it wrong. And in some respects, they've got something wrong that is obviously wrong. How could that be? How could smart people get something wrong that's obviously wrong, that the 4-year-olds get right? Well, it's because they're not blank slates. There's a reason they want to be, the reason they want to reject the biblical view of origins. They want there to be another story. And sometimes when you want something badly enough, you go through mental gymnastics to get there. And that's what they're doing. So today is Wednesday. Wednesday. We had a conversation about this. Why it's was that with? Yes, we had a conversation, didn't we? The one way Darwinists rescue the story, the Darwinian story, and we're going to show why it doesn't work. So here we go. We said this, although this doesn't have separate parts, we said this displays high-level function. The high-level function is, wow, that is a piece of stone, but when I first looked at it, I thought it was a person in motion. It's David with his getting ready to kill Goliath. And we said there's no way that just ordinary physical causes, the things that shaped the walls around here in Taiwan, in these marble formations, there's no way they did this. Someone who knew what he was doing, a master craftsman, did this. His name was Bernini, and this is considered to be he was considered to be one of the finest sculptors of all time, and this is one of his fine sculptures. So if this impressive white figure against a rock background rightly causes all humans to stop and say, oh, someone did this, why would the same not be true for this impressive white figure against a rock background? Is anybody a climber? You're a climber? Dude. These mountain goats, he's going after some little leaf or something there, and I have no idea how this story ends. But can you see, if you're up close enough, there's a serious predicament here. He's like stretched out to get something, and I don't know how he's going to get off this, but they're so good at this. It's truly remarkable. And yet, if we showed this to the Darwinists, they'd say, no, I agree with you on this. That couldn't happen by physical causes, but this did happen by physical causes. And I'm wondering, how can you hold those two together? If you're admitting that this requires intelligent action, how can you deny that this requires intelligent action when we would say which of these this is remarkable, but which is more remarkable? The goat, for sure, right? Okay, how might people try to get around applying our conclusion from functional coherence to living things? And they do try to get around it. So we're going to look at this today. And to make it concrete, let's take a specific example. This is a worm on the left, and that is, I don't know what insect it is, but it's an insect, you can tell by the big, bulby, compound eyes, the attractive eyes. So if you believe the evolutionary account, for a long time in the history of this planet, there were no compound eyes. And then almost literally, there was a first day that there were compound eyes, right? And if you believe the Darwinian account, nobody planned compound eyes. It's just simple natural processes produced compound eyes. So, but there's a lot that has to happen to get from there to there. And a Darwinist would agree. A lot had to happen to get from there to there, but it did happen, and nobody had to plan it. Nobody had to understand how you make compound eyes. They just pop out of this natural process. So here's an interesting thing. Nobody believes this. So if we go back to our diagram of functional coherence, remember you have the top level thing is the thing that performs a high level function, and it only does it because there's an arrangement of subcomponents, of main components, subcomponents, and this would, in a complex thing like compound eyes, it would be layers and layers and layers of stuff that has to be just right, like your smartphone, or more remarkable than your smartphone, all the way down to the very low level. And we said these things are improbable, and remember we did a calculation for just a 5-letter word that said pasta in alphabet soup, and we said, anybody remember how common that was? 1 in 10 octillion bowls of alphabet soup would have something like that. Compound eyes? Oh man, the number's going to be extraordinary, right? Because far more remarkable than a 5-letter word in alphabet soup, or even than that protein molecule that we looked at. So nobody thinks that all these things that you need for compound eyes to work poofed into existence in that worm or something, some descendant of that worm, and suddenly, oh, this is rock and I've got compound eyes. Nobody believes that. They all recognize that that's extraordinarily improbable. Here's a quote from Richard Dawkins, one of our favorite atheists, from, again, The Blind Watchmaker. He said, however many ways there may be of being alive, it is certain that there are vastly more ways of being dead, or rather not alive. You may throw cells together at random over and over again for 1 billion years, and not once will you get a conglomeration that flies or swims or burrows or runs or does anything even badly that could remotely be construed as working to keep itself alive. Okay, so he's a Darwinist, and he's saying there's no way just random shuffling stuff could give you something that does anything, even badly, let alone compound eyes. Now, you might be surprised. Why did he say this? What do you think he thinks is the key word in here that gives an out? I'm hearing a few words. Did you have a hand up, Lizzie? No, hand up. Random. Ezekiel, random. He thinks, Dawkins and the Darwinists think that because natural selection is not random, you can overcome things that would never happen if you were depending on something random. But does anyone see the problem with that? Right here, in Dawkins' own words, is a refutation of that. Emily?
Is it because, like, they're saying that...
No, go. You probably got it.
Like, because they're saying, like, everything happened just by, like, happening to happen, kind of. So, like, by saying these things can't happen at random, he's, like, contradicting himself?
In a way. Josh, do you see? That's not wrong. That's right. I want to unpack it a little bit.
He's talking about natural selection of living things, but there's nothing living to naturally select itself.
Well, pre-life there isn't, but suppose we have living stuff. So he's saying once you've got a worm, you could throw cells in that worm together at random forever, and you'll never get something significant that happens to the worm. But he says natural selection is not random, but there's a reason that this logic fails. Does anyone see why? We haven't talked about what natural selection is, but it's in the logic of natural selection. Because what do you have to have in order for something, April?
Well, I know that natural selection means that, like, the fittest survive,
Uh-huh.
but if there's more ways of being dead, then couldn't it happen that it would go the wrong way a lot of the time, and it would evolve instead of evolve?
Yes. So natural selection is precisely the selecting of things that do work to keep something alive, right? And he's just said that won't happen. So what he said will never happen is precisely what must precede natural selection. Do you get that? The thing that he just said will never happen must happen in order for natural selection to work, because natural selection is precisely the favoring of that thing that had something that worked to keep itself alive. And if that can't ever happen, then natural selection is dead in the water. And he doesn't seem to realize this logic. But let me show you, and I'm not saying that Richard Dawkins is not smart. He's very smart, but people get blinded by the theory that they want to be true. So let me show you how he and Darwinists think you can get around this problem. So I'm going to look at, we said this can't happen in one fell swoop, and everyone acknowledges that. Dawkins would agree with us. So what they think happens is, well, let me show you what they concede. Not only would Dawkins concede that this can't happen in one fell swoop, imagine that this is a much bigger, full, complete hierarchy of all the things you really need for insect compound eyes to work. So we'd have all kinds of proteins that are required for the little facets of that compound eye to work, all of these photoreceptors, all the things that wire it together into the nervous system, all of these different things that have to be placed just right and connected just right for an insect to use compound eyes are in this massive hierarchy, and everyone agrees that can't just happen. They also agree, including Dawkins, that no subset of that whole system, that whole pyramid, this whole structure, is of any significance. In other words, if we said, well, let's give an animal just these things but not the rest, it would be useless because it doesn't produce a full, you need the whole thing to get compound eyes, right? So, and Dawkins, everyone would concede. That part is useless in itself. This part, or this collection of things, subset, is useless in itself. This subset is useless in itself. So everyone agrees on that. If you take away parts of the compound, things that are necessary for the compound eye, you don't have compound eyes. You might get something that forms, but there won't be vision. So it's of no use, right? So here's how you get around this. How do you get around this? That's how you get around it exactly, okay? Any ideas how you might get around this if you were trying to be a clever evolutionist? And you're admitting what we just admitted. First of all, there's no way you get it all at once. Secondly, even subsets are useless until you get the whole thing in the modern compound eyes.
Slow development.
Unpack that.
Like, you don't just get a compound eye, you get an eye, and then like it grows and like slowly changes rather than all at once.
Effectively, yes, but you don't get it this way. You don't even get a subset of the compound eye. So that's basically correct. So, yeah, Josh? A really long time. Well, remember, Dawkins conceded that billions of years is a long time, and he conceded you can do these random things for billions of years and you won't get anything. So it's not just that. So even these smart people are acknowledging that billions of years isn't enough time to do this. Ezekiel.
Even if it took a long time and like what Braden said, it like slowly developed, wouldn't it eventually, since it's useless, just go back?
Sure, if something's useless, then it would get lost. So somehow the Darwinist has to say, here's how something becomes useful, and then it gets selected.
So it's by chance.
Yeah. And by chance, you got the thing that was useful, and then it gets selected. So it's basically what Braden said, or I think in unpacking what Braden said is, let me show you how it works. It's basically stepping stones. And you might say, well, stepping stones are little steps that give you the big thing, but you might be scratching your head saying, well, we just said these little steps won't work, and they won't.
Unless you have all of them.
Right, but that's, well, but then that's like no stepping stones. You're just jumping across the lake, right? So let me show you. Let me show you how they think it works. So I'm covering up with gray the stuff you don't have. And remember, we're starting this worm, or some descendant of the worm that doesn't yet have compound eyes. It's not an insect yet. What we're going to do is say, suppose you could get little groups of things that do pop into existence by chance, and they do something that's of use to the animal, but it's not vision. It's not the function of compound eyes. It's something entirely different. So here, and I'm making these things up, so this is like a fictitious story, but this is the way a Darwinist would think about this. So here I said pheromone distributors, okay? So you get some things that come together and they produce something that does something. It has nothing to do with vision. Pheromone distributors, woohoo, I've got something now that's of some use. And once you have that, if that provides an advantage, then many generations down the road, all of the population is going to have the pheromone distributors because it provides an advantage. That's natural selection, okay? And while that's happening, the next little thing that has nothing to do with vision comes online. Woohoo, balance sensors. So this is some little thing that's happened, and it provides some advantage. It's not vision. It's not the advantage of compound eyes, but it's some advantage. And again, that then passes through the population and becomes a dominant characteristic of the whole population because it's helpful. And then something else comes along, and we've taken away the exclamation point and the woohoo on these because now these are ordinary. Everybody has these now because they've been selected, right? But the next new thing is woohoo, food crushers. I don't know, you got these big things on your head, and you can't see with them, but you can like, okay? So I'm making this up, but fill in the blank. It would be some function that's not vision, right? But that does benefit the organism that has it, okay? And then that becomes standard. And once you have these two things, if they get modified a little bit, something else comes online. Woohoo, solar brain warmers. Okay, so it's not vision yet, but on cold days, you know how you get brain fog on cold days? Anybody else? Raise your hand. No. So solar brain warmers. And this proves to be beneficial, not for vision, because these things aren't actually eyes yet. They're just collecting light energy, we'll say. And that becomes standard. And then, woohoo, contact sensors. That becomes standard. Woohoo, direction sensors. And now I've got all these pieces in place, and it's just needing them to come together. So some minor modification and woohoo, compound eyes. Okay. Now we can go play broom hockey. No. Okay, so is everybody impressed? Wait. Compound eyes are now, once you got those woohoo compound eyes, it's one organism that, I can see. And all of its peers can't see yet because they just had whatever they had. They just had the brain warmers and the direction sensors. But there's an advantage to sight, and so the offspring of that one are going to take over the population, and now you have a population that has compound eyes that work. Josh.
So, do the insects no longer have solar brain warmers?
Well, we're getting to that. So now the whole population has compound eyes, so it's no longer woohoo, compound eyes. It's just, we all have compound eyes. And that's the next step, is now that you have compound eyes, somehow, if we're going to tell this story and be consistent with what we already said is true, with real insects that have compound eyes, somehow all these other functions that at one point in our story were beneficial, they all disappear. So the structures that gave you all these functions that got selected in way back in history, now they all get sort of perfected for compound eyes, and you no longer have those other functions that were historically significant to get the compound eyes. So that all disappears. And now you have compound eyes, a whole bunch of things that allow you to have compound eyes, and if you take away and just keep some subgroup, it doesn't do anything because you've lost the whatever they were, solar brain warmers and all that stuff no longer does anything, because once you got vision, that was a bigger thing, and it all got perfected for vision. Okay, so that's the story. The end. Okay, so that's the end of the Darwinian story. I'm not gonna send you home. No, we're gonna show why that doesn't work. She's like, are you kidding me? Is anybody convinced by this? No, because it seems like a lot of hand-waving and storytelling in order to say something happened that, as far as we can tell, couldn't really happen. It turns out there's an actual proof that came out of an area called algorithmic information theory, and it's called the no free lunch theorem, and it's been proven. And I'll give a paraphrase of the conclusion of the no free, NFL here is not football, it's no free lunch, okay? The NFL theorem proves that the long story for compound eyes can't be any more probable than the poof story, it all coming together at once, unless insight into compound eyes was exploited, right? Let me read that again. The no free lunch theorem, and by the way, the no free lunch theorem was published without anyone thinking about evolution. They were looking at how you do search algorithms and make them smart search algorithms. And they proved that there's no way to cheat and just get to the answer. You have to have insight into what you're trying to find in order to make an algorithm that will find it. That's what they were thinking. But when they proved it, it applies to this. The NFL theorem proves that the long story for compound eyes, which is basically a search, an unguided search, can't be any more probable than the poof story, which means everything's just happening at once, unless insight into compound eyes was exploited, unless someone knew what they were doing, right? So, but if you're a Darwinist saying God's not there, so could someone say, well, evolution works, things evolved because God knows where he wants to take them, and he takes them there? Yeah, you could say that. I'm not refuting that. I'm saying if you want to have a godless explanation of life, it won't work. And this is why it won't work. Materialists cannot help themselves to insight, right? They're saying it all happened without any insight, without any guidance. Okay, so we're not going to read the NFL, no free lunch theorem paper. Instead, I want to unpack this in a way that makes it intuitive for us so we actually get what's going on here. It's not actually a very complicated idea. It's almost intuitive. But I'd like us to go through an exercise. We'll do an actual experiment to convince us, oh, this totally makes sense. Before I do that, I want us to all get this basic principle of probability. We looked at this before when we did the soup. Remember we did the soup calculation by putting the grid over the letters of the soup? This is called the basic principle of probability, and it's the probability of joint occurrence, that means occurrence together, of multiple independent conditions is the product, multiplied, of their individual probabilities. So this will be clear with an example. These are true numbers that I got from the web, and the web never lies. 7% of American population has blood type O negative. Anybody else O negative? Oh, looks like I might be wrong about that. We're the universal donors, right? We can give blood to anyone. I'm O negative. 7% of the... Uh-oh. This is, according to statistics I got from the web, 7% of the American population has blood type O negative. 1% of Americans live in Iowa. Raise your hand if you're from Iowa. This guy's raised his hand for both. Okay? If your birthday is May 11th, I'm getting out of here. Is your birthday May 11th? Okay. 0.27% of Americans have a May 11 birthday. You said your brother has a May 11. Okay. No. May 11? Okay. So what I'm saying is if these numbers are true, and they are numbers that I got from sources that claim they're true, and if these things are independent, right, we wouldn't think that blood type and state that you're from correlates at all. We wouldn't think there's anything to do with type O negative blood and living in Iowa, right? Even you don't think that's true, right? It just happened, right? And we don't think there's anything that connects your birth date to either of these other things, right? It's not that in Iowa they all try to have babies on May 11th. It's just, these are unconnected. So what's the probability that a randomly selected American has O negative blood and lives in Iowa and has a May 11 birthday? Anybody? It'll be these multiplied, right? It'll be these numbers multiplied because they're independent. Assuming these are independent, P all, so probability of all those conditions being satisfied is 0.07 times 0.01 times 0.0027, which is 1.9 times 10 to the minus 6th, and it looks like that. So is everybody happy with that? That's a simple principle of probability. The key thing is those different things, they have to be independent, right? They have to be truly independent, and then you can take the numbers and multiply them, right? Okay, so I have a bunch of these gaming dice, and I forgot to bring them, and I thought, what are the odds that someone in this group would have a 10-sided gaming die? And so I asked around, and I went through like multiple rounds of, no, try this person, try this person, try this person. And it ended up with Peyton, and then he said, dude, pick your number. I've got a die. So here is Peyton's 10-sided gaming die. And the nice thing about a 10-sided die like this is it has 0 through 9. That's 10 numerals, right? All the single-digit numerals. 0 through 9 on the faces. And that means you can roll this and come up with a number, a decimal number, because you're just getting digits, right? So if someone rolls this 12 times, they're going to get a 12-digit number, right? How many 12-digit numbers are there? A lot. More specifically, 10 to the 12. If I said 9, if I said 6-digit numbers, how many? A million. If I said 9, a billion. If I say 12, it's a trillion. So there's a trillion different 12-digit numbers. So someone who's got a piece of paper and something they can record with is going to go around the corner or wherever we can't see you, back there, wherever you want.
Okay.
And you're going to roll this 12 times. Huh? Well, actually, should it be you or is there anyone who sails? Anyone who's a boatsman, a yachtsman or woman, person? Anyone who sails, knows how to sail? Okay, Isaac. Okay, she knows how to roll the die. Okay, so do you sail? Okay, all right, but okay, so your boat is at stake here. I'm going to tell you about that. His yacht, he's from Huntington Beach. He really does have a yacht. You're going to roll this 12 times and record the numbers, but don't let anyone see your numbers. And you go wherever nobody can see you.
Okay.
12 rolls, recording in order. So here's the deal. I had a long conversation with Isaac, and he's got a 200-foot yacht that's in. And he has agreed that if we do this by the rules and nobody's cheating, and Emily goes and gives us a 12-digit number, and if we guess that number on the first guess, he's handing us over the yacht. Right? You're not going to renege now, okay? So he's agreed. We get a 200-foot yacht if we can get the number on the first guess. Okay, so is that a good deal? Well, is that a good deal? Why is that not a good deal? Well, what are the odds? What are the odds that we're going to get the yacht? 1 in a trillion. Does that sound very favorable? That's even worse than Jim Carrey's odds. I like those odds. Okay. So this is like way more favorable than the odds of getting a compound I by accident, right? And what we're going to do is explore whether there are ways that we can hedge the bet. If there are ways that aren't cheating, if we can try different methods that actually are stepping stones toward getting that number right, because if we get the number right, we get a yacht, right? You're not going to back out. Okay, how are we doing on the number? Have we got our number? Yes. Okay, and don't let anyone see it. And you can't help anyone, so you're exempt. You don't get the yacht. You can't help because we're going to try to guess that number.
He told me you can show me, but
We're going to try to guess the number. Okay, so let's think about if we just one thing we could do is we could say, here's the die, right? So if Sam goes back there and does exactly what you did, you went back there and rolled it on the carpet. Is that right? If Sam takes the very same die, you don't have to, but if you did, you could if you want. And you go back there and do the same thing she did and record, what would be the odds that what you write down will match what she wrote down?
like 0, basically.
Exactly 1 in a trillion. There's a trillion outcomes. She's got one of them marked down on paper. If Sam goes and does another one, the odds that they would be the same are 1 in a trillion, right? Because there's a trillion of them, right? So that doesn't help us, right? So we're not going to do it that way. But let's think if there's something that we can do that will help us. what would it look like for circumstances of some kind to help? And the reason we're thinking about this is what the Darwinist is saying. Well, something happened. I agree. A worm can't get compound eyes, but something could happen that makes this actually more probable. And we're exploring this idea. What kind of thing could happen that would make this more probable, apart from cheating, right? Because cheating would be the equivalent of God made the compound eyes because he knew what he was doing, and we could know what we're doing by cheating, but we're not going to do that. So example 1 is roll another 12. So we could give the die to Sam. She could go roll another 12. We decided likelihood of match on first try is 1 in a trillion. That doesn't help us at all, right? Because we could just throw out a number, right? This is also interesting. What if Sam did it a trillion times, which is against the rules, because Isaac specifically said it's got to be on the first try. But what if it would take you a long time, right? But what if we had a machine that could throw out 10,000 of these until we got a trillion 12-digit numbers from rolling the dice? It still wouldn't be a slam dunk. It would be 64% chance that we would get the, huh? That's not very good. Even a trillion attempts would not be certain to get it. Why is that? Because a lot of those attempts would be duplicating we'd get the same number lots of times, same numbers lots of times. Only if we walked through all trillion would we definitely get it. Peyton?
How do you calculate getting the same, say like that there's duplicates and get 64%?
I can show you this calculation later, but the reason it's not 100% is because of the duplicates. And if you walked through the numbers like in order, then it'd be 100% that you'd get it if you went through all trillion, right? And usually you get it well before you went through all trillion. Okay, let's look at another example. We could have 12 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 12 people right here. Give the last digit. Oh, but you're one of the 12. So we'll have Peyton be the 12. So I want you come over on this stool so that we can't cheat. So you're going to be looking at your number, which is
stand. Thank you.
okay. And then we're going to go through last digit of our phone numbers, of our cell phone numbers, and you're comparing to see if we win the yacht here. And don't say higher or lower. Don't say anything until we're all done, right? Okay.
0, 9,
0.
3,
1,
2,
1, 5, 3. What are we doing?
I didn't know either. I was like, are we naming?
Last digit of your cell phone.
Oh,
5.
restart.
1.
Okay, let's do it again. Is everyone clear? We're not just guessing numbers. We're doing the last digit of your cell. Oh yeah, let's do it again.
0, 9, 9,
5.
3,
1,
2,
1, 5, 3, 5.
1.
Did we get the yacht?
No.
I'm afraid we didn't.
How?
Okay.
that's a trick.
Jonah, we have a last digit the same number. How cool is that?
What's the likelihood that would have worked? 1 in a trillion. Because why? Because why would there be any connection between... The reason all of this is not helping us is because what Emily did back there with the die has nothing to do with our phone numbers, right? So why would there be any connection? There wouldn't unless it's pure chance. And what is the odds that it would happen by pure chance? 1 in a trillion. So this doesn't help us at all. Okay, we've tried some strategies. How about a phone number is a 10-digit, 3 area code and then 7 digits. So it's a 10-digit number. If we put 00 in front of it, so we prefix someone's cell phone number with 00, we have a 12-digit number, right? And so it's possible that we could just, among ourselves, say, okay, who's it going to be, who's it going to be, who's it going to be? And we pick someone, and we put 00 in front of it, and then we do the 10-digit cell phone number. And it could be that we get the yacht. So who should it be? Should it be Tanner? Yeah. I think it should be Tanner. Okay, let's give it a shot. Okay. 00.
949.
Okay, so that didn't work.
Everyone all at once.
The likelihood of a match on the first try is 1 in a trillion. Nothing is helping so far. And in fact, the likelihood that any existing cell number provides a match is less than 1% because it's quite possible, it's quite unlikely that she rolled 0, 0 at the beginning. She could have. Do you want to tell us? Did you roll 0, 0? Or your first two? First two? Go ahead and tell us. Are the first 2 digits 0, 0? Nope. Okay, so that's off. Nobody's phone number would have worked. Tanner was as good as anyone, but none of the phone numbers would have worked with 0, 0 in front. And then you could say, well, we could try something else in front. Okay, but it's still going to be 1 in a trillion, right? All right. Okay, so here's my next one. Follow me here. All right? Okay, so what if, because some parrots can talk, right? And it's possible that some parrots, well, they don't really talk, but they sound like they're talking, right? Why are you looking so shocked by this?
I've never heard a bird talk before.
A parrot? Parrots talk. They can be trained to, they don't know what they're saying, but they can be trained to say, hello, good morning, right? You've never heard that? No. Okay. 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 No. They can mimic. Parrots, parakeets. Is there a video? Do we have a video of a talking parrot? They don't know what they're saying, but they can be trained to say things, okay? Okay, so parrots can talk. There's no reason that I know of that a parrot couldn't be trained to squawk out numbers, right? If you can train them to say good morning, have a nice day, that kind of stuff, you could train them to say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So suppose we leave a door open here and a squawking parrot comes into the room and perches on the microphone and squawks out 12 numbers, 12 numerals, and some scribe, someone with Kirtland with her pen, is jotting down the numbers as the parrot is squawking, all 12 of them. And suppose the parrot happens to squawk out the right 12 that are on Emily's sheet, then I think we can all agree that we win the yacht, right? Yeah. And Isaac is yawning here because he's not even worried about losing his yacht. If that story, so I told a story. We open the door, a parrot comes in, it squawks out 12 numbers, Kirtland writes them down, we go over to Emily and they match, and we go home with a yacht, right? So, I'm not sure if we agreed that. Okay, so I told a story. Would you agree with me that if the story is correct, we win, right? So the only problem is what? How likely is the story is the problem, okay? So here's how you do this. Talking parrot flies in and squawks the numbers. There's the probability of a parrot flying in, and you multiply that by the probability of, let's say, the probability of a number squawking parrot flying in and squawking out 12 numbers, and then you'd have to multiply that by the probability that they happen to be the right 12 numbers, right? Exactly. That's my point. Okay, so this second, we don't need to worry about that first probability, but it's pretty low, right? Especially in this climate, because the poor parrot would probably be dead before. But if we were in a warmer climate, it's at least possible. See, I tell this story in Southern California, and there are wild parrots there. Yeah, there are, because they got released in their... So whatever this first P is, it's very low. Suppose it's 1 in a million, right? What's the second P, though? It's 1 in a trillion. So we haven't, not only have we not helped things, we've made it worse. Do you see? Because the odds of the parrot coming in and squawking out 12 numbers, that probability is very low, and we have to multiply that by the the probability that it's the right 12 numbers, and that's still 1 in a trillion. So we told the story to try to help, and we agreed that if the story were true, it would help. The problem is if we take into account the likelihood of the story itself, it makes it worse, not better, okay? And that's very key, because that is the no free lunch theorem, okay? So why, and can anyone come up with some other thing other than cheating that would help us get the yacht, that would make the odds better than 1 in a trillion in one guess? Isaac. I mean, what would help us is to do lots and lots of guesses. JT. In one guess. April.
We torture her until she tells us.
Yes, that would work. We torture Emily until she gives us the number. That was April's idea. But, yes, Faye?
If you became Jesus and you know her thoughts and you know exactly what she's thinking.
If you're omniscient.
Yeah.
If you were omniscient.
No, I'm saying if Jesus came down.
So I guess we'd have to decide whether that's cheating or not. Mackenzie.
Comes like a thief in the night.
If, as you're guessing numbers, there was some way to know whether the number was wrong or right, is that cheating? Like, what if that actually mattered, or does that go against they have to be disconnected and don't, like, not?
So that would certainly work. Like if we said, okay, 0 is the 0 right, and like that, and we got one digit at a time. And if she says, no, it's not right, then we say, okay, how about 4? If we kept guessing, then we definitely get it. Because if she's giving us hints on every digit, then we would definitely guess it. But that is cheating. We have to just come up with a number without any knowledge of what's on the paper. Peyton. And then we string together the shoe size. But isn't that the same as the cell phone numbers? Isn't that the same as the cell phone numbers? The odds are still 1 in a trillion or worse, right? Because, yeah?
Is it cheating to know the numbers?
What's that?
Is it cheating to know the numbers but not in order?
Yeah, that's cheating. We have no information. Josh. Is it less likely what? What do people think? If you rolled a 6 on the first roll, what are the odds that you roll a 6 on the second roll? 1 in 10. Doesn't make any difference. What if you rolled 6s on the first 11 rolls? What are the odds that you'll roll a 6 on the last roll? 1 in 10. JT.
I mean, you could roll the dice like 1,000 times and see which numbers are most probable and use those to make your plummet.
Well, so I'm assuming that it's a well-made, fair die. Okay, so technically JT's right that if we did a very, very systematic test on that die and we found that it's slightly off perfection, we could hedge our numbers, but I think that would make it, we would improve our odds maybe by, instead of 1 in a trillion, it'd be 1 in 986 billion 999. Yeah. So it would probably not do much. Okay. So I think yes.
Just real quick, you just rolled it 12 times. You were able to take, if you rolled doubles, you were able to take a double. Like if you rolled a 6 already, then you kept the 6. Or you rolled a 5 already.
She should have just rolled it 12 times. And whatever came up, came up. Whatever came up, came up. Okay, so circumstances can't plausibly know how to guide us to the right number, right? Whatever method we pick, it can't know what happened back there. Isaac.
Could you, do the math of statistical probability for every number to be rolled, and then by the number of times that it was rolled, and calculate that out, and then try to figure out the numbers after?
Well, this goes back to what JT was saying. If it's a fair die, then the odds are just simply 1 in 10 for each digit, right? And if there's any imperfection to it, it's probably very, very minor. So you could hedge it by the imperfection, but it's going to be a very small effect, right? Yeah, if it were a loaded die, then that would be different. Okay, Circumstances can't plausibly know how to guide us to the right number because whatever scheme we come up with, it has nothing to do with what happened back there when Emily rolled the actual die. At best, they allow all of the possible numbers. And we thought of schemes that don't, like putting 00 in front of Tanner's phone number doesn't allow all possible numbers, so that's bad. At best, they leave the probability of success at 1 in a trillion, right? None of our schemes, apart from the what if it's a slightly imperfect die, but at best, we're left with 1 in a trillion, right? Okay. So I'm going to give you some principles now. The principle of infinitesimal targets. The remarkable features that enable living things to flourish, like compound eyes, always require arrangements of matter that are astonishingly rare among the possible ways for matter to be arranged. This is what even Richard Dawkins was acknowledging in that quote. This is always the case, right? And not just for the remarkable things in living systems, but human inventions as well. Here's another principle, the principle of costly assumptions. Any assumed conditions that would improve the accidental appearance of a remarkable feature must themselves be so improbable as to provide no net advantage. So I call this appealing to the parrot. And the sleight of hand here, when Darwinists do this, is they tell the parrot story and they say, yeah, so that will get you to the end. That will give you what you need. And to that you say, yes, if the parrot story were true, you get what you need. Now, what's the likelihood that the parrot story is true? And that's the part that they ignore. Do you see what I'm saying here? You can presuppose something and tell a story that gets you to the end, but you haven't answered the whole problem until you said, okay, well, how likely is your story? And they're not thinking of it that way. They're saying, we know this is true. We know this has evolved. So I'm going to tell a story that shows how it could have evolved. But they don't go back and say, well, how likely is that story? Right? So this is the no free lunch theorem really in simple terms. And I call it appealing to the parrot. Now, I'm going to give you, we can run through this because we got something happening at 8, right? I'm going to give you a proof, 5-step proof that I give to my students that shows how no free lunch applies to evolutionary invention like this very quickly, and it won't be on any exam that you have, I think. Maybe it will. No, I don't know. Okay, proof that evolutionary stepping stones don't work. This is basically the logic that we've just gone through. 1, and that's pretty small, I apologize. Consider a new high-level function that would improve a species' fitness. Step 1. Step 2, let P be the raw improbability of this function appearing by accident in that species. Okay? It's going to be far less than 1 in a trillion. 3, then P is just the raw improbability of all the needed components for the function appearing and assembling. That's what P is. All the things you need for this to work have to appear and they have to come together to make it work. That's what P is. 4, for all the needed components to appear with other functions that improve fitness and then to assemble must be less probable than P. So this is the food crusher, solar brain warmer, that story for getting compound eyes. By adding those other functions that are of benefit and then saying you get P, you make the probability lower, not higher, because you've added these new constraints. Not only do you get compound eyes, but you got solar brain warmers and food crushers and pheromone and all these other things, and then you got compound eyes. For all the needed components to appear with other functions that improve fitness and then to assemble must be less probable than P. Does that make sense? Because you've made the story more extreme, more extraordinary. Not only do you get everything you need for compound eyes, you got a whole bunch of other things along the way, and then they disappeared, and then you had compound eyes, right? Therefore, 5, selective stepping stones don't improve the raw improbability of getting new high-level functions by accident. It makes it worse, not better. Yeah? Okay. We're ready for broom hockey. I don't have any theorems for that. I don't have any proofs. But I have a good feeling. April.
Can you just go back to the slide of the principle of probability?
Yes, I can. Principle of probability. You like that early one where you multiply things?
Yeah.
Okay.
I started writing it in other places.
Was it here? NFL theorem. Basic principle of probability. Okay, any other questions?
So, in order
Tell me your name again.
My name's Boston.
Boston.
In order for something to help your probability, you have to like add it to the equation and then times it by or multiply it by all the other things, right?
Yeah, the bottom line is you can't improve on the raw improbability unless you know what you're doing.
So it would have to be 100% of the time that something would happen in order for it to be a whole number so that you could multiply it and maybe help your chance.
Wait, say that again?
So like if you are multiplying all these percentages, right, which are not whole numbers.
Yes.
Percentages,
Yep.
you're only lowering your percentage because you're adding things
Right.
that are going to multiply it and make it less likely of
Yep.
a chance. And so it would have to be 100% or higher or
Y-
something.
yeah, so if you said, suppose there were a universe. Okay, P equals 1, there is a universe, okay, something like that. So if you're, that's really not even a presupposition. If you're saying, here's something certain that's a condition for this to happen, then the probability is 1, but there isn't any certain thing that solves the problem of getting compound eyes or solves the problem of us getting the yacht, right? But I think we can, if we just scrap all this theory and we just take a run at it, we still haven't formally entered our guess, and Isaac is still got a yacht he's willing to give up. So if we just take a crack at this, we still could go home with a yacht. Yeah, Ezekiel.
How do we get the yacht? How do we know the number? Is there any
Let's take a shot at this. I've done this before and I got the first 3 digits, and the class was like, yes, yacht, yacht, yacht. Okay, who's feeling like they might be able to take a stab at this? All right, let's. Well, let's say if you get the first number right, we're probably going to say, go again, right?
All right, first number 6.
Oh. Okay, let's try someone else. Are you going to try first number?
First number is 3.
The first number is 5.
Nope.
Is it 3?
Josh. What was it? 4.
7.
First number 7.
Dude, you're on a roll. Take the second number.
Is the second number 2?
Nope.
We're really not very good at this.
It's gonna take a long time.
Now you're going to try to get your own yacht. Isaac.
So 7. Let's go 3. No, sorry, 2. I just said 2. Dude, wait, said 2? Like 3. I mean 3.
No. Let's.
Stevie, take a stab at it.
No.
All right, just give us the number. All 12. Here we go.
Oh, wait, guess it. Why don't you guess it?
Okay, we just know 7, right? I'm pretty sure it's
Based on her demeanor.
7, 0. Check again. No, give it to us. 7, 1.
I can live with it.
7, 5, 7, 6, 9, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 6.
Seriously, 4 2s in a row.
And then 2 6s at the end.
4 2s in a row. I think it is a loaded die.
So do I get the yacht?
If we had known that.
That's crazy.
Isaac, can she have it?
Somebody can repeat the number to me exactly.
Hey, let me pray for us, and then like we're minutes away from heading to the ice, right? Is that called the? What's the name of the thing? The Ark. Okay, let me pray for us, and then do we need any announcement or anything, or?
Quiet, guys. Yeah, we'll meet back up here for broom hockey at 8 p.m. We'll drive a couple students down. Dallas is gonna help drive too, so let's meet back in the lobby 8 p.m. Let's go hockey.
Okay, let me pray for us. Father, we thank you that when we look at the marvelous things around us that you've placed here, that we know that they speak of your goodness and your power and your grace and your beauty and your love of beauty. And so, Father, help us not to miss that, to delight in the things that you have made every time that we see them. and to delight in sharing the joy of that with other people who maybe are not seeing that clearly. We thank you for your goodness. Pray for a wonderful time, those of us who are going to be involved in the broom hockey this evening, and for safety on the ice. In Jesus' name, amen.